Tonight, we're talking about Oklahoma Masonic leaders, the three leaders that covered the years 1982 to 2010. Tonight, I plan to cover these men who held the rank of SGIG for the years after Rosenberger and up to our current leader, Joe Manning, in lightning fashion, so we can cover all three. First, of course, is Frederick A. Daugherty. He was born in Oklahoma City, August the 18th, 1914. Both parents died when he was 19 years old. He received his law degree from Oklahoma University in 1937. After practicing law for 18 years, he was appointed a district judge, and then 6 years later, in 1961, was appointed a federal judge. During the years, he was involved in every civic organization in town. Now, I've mentioned with most of these other men that we've talked about during this series that every one of them were very active in civic life of their own community. They were in all sorts of, but there was a 2-page deal in Bob Davis's book about all of the things in Oklahoma City that he was in, and it was unbelievable, all that he participated in. He was inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame in 1969. So he was a celebrity when he came on board. I've already discussed the beginning of his military career, but he was called to active duty in September of 1940, a year before Pearl Harbor, and served later in the Pacific Theater. He returned to active duty in 1950 during the Korean conflict with the 45th Division, and was promoted as a brigadier general in 1952 at the age of 38 during that conflict. He remained active in the Guard after Korea and retired as a major general and commander of the 45th Division. That was his quick career in the Guard and in the regular forces. I've also gone over his beginning years in Masonry. Fred Daugherty was much more active in the Scottish Rite after demitting to Guthrie in 1970, which I mentioned is 34 years after he became a member of here in McAlester. He received his KCCH in 1973 after going to Guthrie, and his 33rd degree in 1975. As mentioned, he was appointed deputy of the Supreme Council after the Grandmaster debacle, and the next year was elected SGIG at the age of 69 and 2 months. Now, Carly Bryant couldn't serve because he was going to be 70, but Fred Daugherty was 69 plus when he was appointed. Inspector Daugherty's legacy to the Scottish Rite was with the ritual and the degree presentation of the three valleys. He wanted the actors and to give good and dramatic acting, the audio and technical aspects to be top-notch, and he directed that the language of the degrees be updated to more effectively communicate with the 20th century man in all three valleys. The work was done by each degree and submitted to him. He didn't revise them themselves, the degrees. He asked the degree teams that were putting on these degrees to revise them with what they thought, and then he took it and put them all together. He was pleased with the results, with what these degree teams did, and he took what was called the Oklahoma work to the Grand Commander, who was equally impressed. And so at that time, the Grand Commander ordered that the Oklahoma work could be adopted in any valley in the southern jurisdiction that wanted to use it. Inspector Daugherty, this was his main thing while he was the SGIG, as far as I can find out, is that he concentrated on trying to improve the degrees. Already it was recognized that our membership was going down, and his answer to that was have better degrees. And so he worked for that. He didn't worry about the finances or some of the other aspects of the job. So this was what I would guess would be considered his legacy. Inspector Daugherty resigned in January of 1986, as he had agreed to only take the job for a short time. He didn't say how long when he took it, but he said he would only take it for a short period of time. And so after 4 years, his tenure was actually 3 years and 3 months. So Frederick Daugherty then went on, and I think his primary purpose for the rest of his life was building the 45th Museum, 45th Division Museum up there in Oklahoma City. And so that's what he actually resigned, because he wanted to devote all his time to that, is what I understand. But during those period of times, he actually died in 2006 at the age of 91. 91. Our next person to be looked at is Paul T. Million, Jr. I know more about Paul Million than what time we have this evening, and or perhaps what would be appropriate for this evening's presentation. Paul was 6 years older than me, but we were both born and raised in McAlester, and both were lifelong citizens of this city. Our families were acquainted, our wives were good friends, and we played golf in the same group. I will proceed in the normal manner of coverage as given to the preceding SGIGs. Paul Million enlisted in the Army in 1942 at age 18 during World War II. He served in an infantry unit in combat area in France and Germany. He was awarded the Bronze Star and 2 oak leaf clusters, the Purple Heart, and of course the Combat Infantryman's Badge. Following World War II, he attended OU and graduated in 1948, thereafter returning to McAlester and the family automobile business. Since he came from a Masonic family, his Masonic education began immediately upon his return from college. As a member of the Masonic Lodge number 96, he went through the consistory in 1949. Paul had a unique distinction of being a third-generation McAlester Scottish Rite treasurer. His grandfather, E.C. Million, 33rd degree, a local banker, was a longtime treasurer. His father, Paul T. Million, 33rd degree, served as treasurer for another 40 years. And then Paul served as treasurer for just a few years. And then I might mention that also then he was succeeded by his brother Bradley. So that was four people. It wasn't generation. He was Bradley, the same generation, but 4 people from the same family served as treasurers for all that long period of time. Million was a member of the York Rite, the Red Cross, and the Bedouin Shrine. He was appointed deputy of the Supreme Council after Daugherty's resignation in February of 1986 and became an SGIG in October of the next year, 1987. Paul Million served for the next 13 years as the head guy in Oklahoma. He had a profound legacy on both the Orient level and the Supreme Council level. Paul Million was as tight as the bark on a tree. This is a slang way of saying he was conservative regarding money. This was true with his personal assets, his operation of the Ford dealership, and it carried over into Masonic life. And by the way, he was the same way on the golf course. Masons in Oklahoma are fortunate that a person like Paul came along when he did. In all the years since World War II, income was not a problem. However, serious downsizing in membership had taken place by the time Paul came along, and it became a problem, and Million met it head on. He put in place the tightening up of local spending, the increase of dues against a lot of noise and yelling and unhappiness, and better management of our endowed assets. He set up foundations to maintain our big buildings. Bob Davis wrote this about Million. During his tenure, he preserved and secured in times of financial adversity what others have built in times of prosperity. His mark of bringing financial integrity and long security to the Rite's largest assets, their physical improvements, will most certainly be felt for years to come. So it can be said that he was the right guy at the right time in Oklahoma Scottish Rite Masonry. On the Supreme Council level, I said he left a legacy both locally and at the top level. He picked up on Daugherty's local level effort to improve the language of the degrees. Because of his committee efforts on the Supreme Council, major changes were made that have occurred only, and those changes were actually made only occurred one other time in the past 150 years. Paul T. Million, as SGIG from 1987 to 2000, put in more personal time and dedication to the cause of Scottish Rite Masonry than I think most of his predecessors did. Paul died in 2000 at the age of 78. Joseph C. Jennings was our next SGIG. Joe Jennings was born, listen to this, in Whiz-Bang, which was in Osage County, Oklahoma. Whiz-Bang, Oklahoma. How would you like to say, my name's Joe Jennings, I'm from Whiz-Bang. Boy, oh boy. Well, he graduated from Scheidler High School, which was near Whiz-Bang. He went to college at Oklahoma A&M, which at the time was, which later became Oklahoma State, and he graduated with a degree in banking and finance in 1951. He then entered the Army during the Korean War, and he spent his time in the Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah. So he never was overseas, but so he was in some type of special work there in Utah. After the war, he entered Tulsa Law School, graduating in 1958. He practiced law for 9 years and then was elected to the bench in 1967. He served the citizens of Tulsa County as district judge for the next 28 years. That's 7 4-year terms. Wow. And then he retired in 1994. He became an active Mason after his college work. He was a member of the Rock Masonic Lodge, serving as worshipful master. He was an A-rated certified lecturer. He was active in the York Rite, the Akdor Shrine, the Red Cross of Constantine, and of course the Tulsa Valley of the Scottish Rite. After Paul Million's death, he was appointed as deputy of the Supreme Council and then SGIG in 2011. 2001, and then he served until 2011. During his tenure, he was a quiet but strong leader. He changed advisory conference meetings during his term to monthly, so that the advisory conference met monthly. And one of the unique things about him was that his talks to the candidates, and of course then all attending, during opening ceremonies of reunions, they were always unique, interesting, and motivating. Inspector Jennings became ill and resigned in 2011, and then died in 2013. He resigned in 2011, but he didn't die until 2 years later. He was a good man and effective leader who left his mark on Oklahoma Scottish Rite masonry. These are the three men who served in these last years until our current presiding Sovereign Grand Inspector General. These men all contributed something, and they each had their own individual ways of doing things. They were quite amazing men, all of them, and that's the way that all of these people that we've discussed, they really have been amazing men, not only in masonry, but almost in every aspect of that you could think of a good citizen and a person that you would be most proud of to be your leader. That ends our series on Masonic leaders, and we will put that to rest. So thank you.